Thank you for joining us today. I'm James Dougherty. We're so excited today to be talking about the opportunities God gives us to serve people from all over the world that He brings to live near us here.
And I'm Lisa Dougherty. James and I serve as the OMF US President and Co-National Directors.
And I'm Angie Long, serving as the Global Neighbors Facilitator for OMF here in the US, which is helping us lean into a new ministry that we're going to be talking to you about today.
But I think before we get started on today's discussion, it might actually be helpful just to let everyone know a little of our shared history. In the early 2000s, both of you, James and Angie, joined OMF US and you joined the mobilization team. And at that time, you were the younger kids on the team, both in your early 20s and decades younger than most of your coworkers. That was a long time ago. How did it go working together in those earlier days, and where are we at now?
It was amazing. It was amazing for all of us. I mean, yeah, it is crazy to think that was 25 years ago now. Not to date you, James, but
I'm still 29. I don't know what happened.
But yeah, it was such a fun season of like our boss really bringing on some new young people. And so we were all definitely learning about who we are as well as how to do ministry together. And James and I definitely had a different approach to new ideas. I like to come up with them and he liked to tell me why they wouldn't work. So that was kind of the beginning of our working together. But over time, we really did learn to really appreciate the different perspectives that each of us had. I learned to say, James, I have this great idea. What are some things I should think through to make it, work? And he learned to say, that's a great idea, Angie, before he started telling me all the reasons that I shouldn't do it.
It was a lot of learning, but it was fun. Kind of amazing since then. Lisa and I and our kids went and served in Asia for several years. Angie and Adam and their kids went and served in Asia for several years. And now it's unbelievable. We're back here together in the US again and getting to work together at OMF and getting to be a part of this work that God's calling us to, serving our neighbors that come in from all over the world. So it's amazing to get to serve together with people we have a long history with. It's really incredible.
Yeah, very surreal. James and Lisa, maybe you guys could start by sharing what is OMF, as an organization has been focused on East Asia for a very long time, but we've also had some ministry to East Asian people living outside their home country. So maybe you guys could just start by sharing what some of that history is within OMF.
Yeah. It's kind of amazing. If you look back to the 1950s, and at the time, we were still called the China Inland Mission at that time, and we had sort of finished this period of leaving China, which we didn't want to do, but that's just how things had worked out at that time. And so for the China Inland Mission that would become OMF eventually, we were sort of not sure what to do next. Our ministry in China, after all these decades, had come to an end. And in the initial years after that, our focus was actually on the Chinese diaspora, the Chinese people who were now outside of China. And that was sort of the first focus that OMF took on at the time and working in that. And so in some ways, that was kind of the roots. That was the beginning for us of this seeing that God was moving people all over the world and that our heart, what had been decades of our heart for the Chinese people, now extended into other countries. And then that continued all through the decades, through the rest of the 1900s. And we've always sort of seen that wherever we go, God has East Asian peoples and these other places, and there's ministry opportunities around them. I remember when I first started working with OMF here in the US, and I came to our office here in the Denver area. This was the early 2000s, and we were very focused on mobilizing, sending out, supporting missionaries that were going to go serve in Asia. But then there was a team of Japanese people working in our building. And I thought, that's really interesting. Like, why? How is this happening? And I came to understand that what we were seeing at the time is that there were many Japanese students and others that were in the US, they were becoming Christians. and that we had this ministry in the U.S. that was equipping them, discipling them, preparing them that when they returned to Japan, they could really be ready to go back and strengthen the church in Japan and to continue on in their faith. And so this Japanese team was doing an amazing ministry in that. And for OMF in the last 20 years, this has really become sort of a special focus for us. We felt that God has really pushed us to have this focus on strengthening the church in Asia through equipping and connecting returnees, that believers that become Christians outside of their home countries, when they go back, they can continue on in their faith and encourage the church.
I remember those days of the network being upstairs in our building, and they're such a fun group. I always was like, I want to go set up my desk in their area. But yeah, it's pretty amazing how that ministry really grew to impact a lot of people. So then, Lisa, maybe you could share with us what was the impetus for the increase in focus on East Asia's peoples in the U.S. right now, especially beyond returnees, those that are going back. But maybe you could just share some of what led to the development of this ministry.
We've always loved that strategy of equipping returnees. But then the question is, there's so many that aren't returning. And does that just mean that we don't do anything because they don't have that focus? And I think part of it too is, we're seeing in the US, we're quickly approaching around 20 million people from East Asian backgrounds in our country. And they're living throughout the US. Rather than just, kind of like when we think about that, we just think about them on the West Coast and on the East Coast, but they're really now throughout the U.S. And just when I go shopping, we don't live in a very diverse part of the U.S. We live in the suburbs of Denver. And even 5 years ago, when we first moved here and I would go shopping at Costco, maybe, once a month, I would hear an Asian language being spoken. And pretty much now, every time I go, I hear some Asian language being spoken in Costco. So I think that just kind of represents the changing landscape. And I think for us, we have always loved and wanted to live our lives to see the church grow amongst East Asia's peoples. And that really doesn't have geographical limits. We loved our time living in Asia, but we see, the same needs all over the world. And we have that passion for those church and mission movements anywhere that they are.
James, how has OMF really responded to this increase in the number of East Asia's peoples here in the U.S. In some of the trends that have been happening?
Yeah, we had a period of initial research where we were just sort of confirming. We wanted to understand the need better and see what was happening there. And we heard really strongly in that as we were connecting with churches and mission partners and others that we love serving together with, that in many places there are some strong church and mission movements among East Asian communities in the U.S., and we praise God for that. We love what he's doing in that. But there are so many where the church hasn't even started yet, or maybe the church has started, but it's really struggling. It really, they're having a hard time and really desiring to have more partnership and support to be alongside them in that. In fact, some of the key partners that we talked with sort of came back to us and they said, "Hey, OMF, aren't these your people? Like, you guys are all about this focus on East Asia's peoples. Why aren't you in this space with us? Like, we're sort of looking for you to get involved." And so that was a real confirmation of the need in that. The last couple of years for OMF here in the U.S., we've been through a process of updating our vision and mission and sort of our focus. We're continuing on in the same ministries we did before. We want to mobilize and stir up the church to get more people involved in missions. We want to send out workers that are trained and equipped. We want to support them so that they sustain and persevere in ministry in a good way. But in addition to that, we're really taking on the vision to say, what does it look like for us to start, support, and partner with East Asian church and mission movements here in the U.S.? And really taking that on now, that's also a part of our vision. It's also what our community, it says, it's what the OMF Fellowship is about in this. And so it was really exciting in the last couple of years to go through that and then to start a dedicated team that's just going to focus on that area. So this is the perfect time for us to transition and start to ask you some questions, Angie, because this is when you came into the picture.
And it's just amazing to see in the last few years and how all of these things have brought together and bringing this team together. And Angie, this is why I'm really excited for you to share just a little bit about your journey and how God led you into this ministry, because you really were an answer to the prayers that we were asking.
As we shared earlier, I was with OMF from shortly out of college in 2000, helped coordinate and direct the short-term missions Serve Asia program for about 8 years, and then helped with some of the international development of Serve Asia as well, which was amazing. And so really had kind of, I would say, grown up a little bit as an adult inside OMF. And that was a very strong leadership and family community for me. And then when I met my husband, we both really had a heart for Asia and missions. And he was also hot. So I was like, well, duh, this is clearly God's plan for my life, right? So yeah, long story short, we got married, and then we're praying about really where God wanted us to serve. And so we ended up in Southeast Asia for 3 years, really doing more in the equipping and mobilizing of believers to reach out to the unreached groups around them. Yeah, we lived there with our very little baby children for 3 years, and unfortunately had to come back a lot earlier than we thought we were going to. And that was a pretty significant crisis of faith for us and our kind of life plans. Eventually, God led us back into other types of missions involvement. So my husband went back to pastoring and really focused on missions at a local church here in Denver. And then shortly thereafter, I started working for a ministry here in kind of inner city Denver that was focused on really helping the refugee, immigrant, homeless population. And so I coordinated the ESL, English as a Second Language ministry, and then taught English to adults from really like all over the world. Like, these classes were so fun to help them build community with each other and begin to learn some skills that would really help them thrive here. And so I ended up being in this ministry for about 5 years. But the last year I was there, I was really feeling restless. Like, I really missed the international kind of mission scene. I missed being in a position that was a little more leadership and team building. And so shortly there, I guess, yeah, it was around a year and a half ago, James and Lisa and I had lunch, and they started talking about this new ministry that OMF was wanting to develop to reach out to East Asia's diaspora here in the US. And would I be interested in thinking about that? And I remember leaving that lunch conversation just like, what the heck? Like, it felt like one of those moments that God lets you see the back side of this tapestry that he's been weaving. And I remember just like my spirit just saying like, yes, like this is it. This is what all these different threads of kind of my journey were for, or leading to, I guess. And so, yeah, I was really excited to get to come back to OMF, which had changed a lot over the 5 years that I was away, but also to get to come back to a lot of family and a lot of just sweet working relationships and reconnecting with people.
Angie, when we first started talking with you about this ministry, we didn't even know what to call it. We didn't have a name. That was sort of one of the first things on there. Can you share with us what name did we sort of land on, and why? Why do we call it this?
Yeah, so for the first, I think, 9 months, I was calling it East Asia Diaspora Non-Returnee Ministry, something or other. Like, every email had this very long working title. And so we went through this process of really like, okay, first of all, I had this advisory group that was really helping pray and discern and think about things for the first year. And so came up with just this whole list of potential names, and ended up doing a poll among our US team as well as in the advisory group. So Global Neighbors was one of those. And so several things that are advisory group and some others that gave feedback on this name really loved about it was, first of all, when we think about what Jesus says in the Bible, about love your neighbor, and the story of the good neighbor, the good Samaritan, is a story of a cross-cultural interaction, right? Like he's going to help somebody that really he shouldn't actually be interacting with, and it's a very significant culture gap, and yet he does above and beyond whatever he can to help this neighbor. But then as we think about a neighbor is somebody that lives near us, right? Like it's like within our neighborhood. It's supposed to be kind of within our community, within our close community. And so we wanted to think about who are our neighbors now, right? Our neighbors are very diverse. Like in my neighborhood alone, I have people from Poland and India and Mexico. And so we have these neighbors that have come from all over the world, which is kind of the global piece. But we also wanted to challenge people to think about, and churches, to think about how do we be good global neighbors to these people, right? Like to my neighbors who came from Poland, I'm their global neighbor, right? Because I'm not from their culture and background. And so that's some of what we really feel kind of as a team, like called to help other people learn some cross-cultural skills and even contextualizing the gospel in a way that makes sense for their global neighbors.
So it's great. God brought you here. He had this advisory group to help you. You have a name. What are some of the things that your team, and God's been bringing you team members as well, what are you focusing on in these first couple of years and trying to figure out what Global Neighbors is?
Yeah, it feels like 100 things all at once, honestly. But some of the main things that are this advisory group, which was made up of leaders kind of both within and outside of OMF, who have kind of some experience in diaspora ministry and other things. We spent a lot of time praying and discerning and discussing all the needs that are out there, and really what was OMF kind of uniquely equipped or maybe in the space to do. And so definitely at the top of the list was like, how do we help American churches first be aware of the fact that a lot of the world's unreached peoples have moved into our neighborhoods, right? For my church in Denver, like what are the groups that really are still predominantly less than 1%, some of them 0%, Christian, that have moved into our neighborhoods, and we have this amazing opportunity to be missionaries to them right here. So that, raising awareness as well as trying to equip churches that want to be more intentional about cross-cultural ministry in their neighborhoods. I think, we can see that a lot of church missions has been exported to over there, right? And whereas we see now that missions is this new paradigm that's really from everywhere to everywhere and from everyone to everyone. And so we have just a very different world of what does missions look like. So yes, you may send missionaries to Cambodia, but you may also have Cambodians who are still Buddhists living down the street from your church. And so is there a way that we can help churches kind of feel aware, but also equipped to reach out to them? So that's one of the main things. We are in the process and have been in the process of a lot of listening. Really, we want to learn from our East and Southeast Asian churches and pastors and leaders that are already doing significant things, and God's been doing significant things in and through them. And so we just want to learn how we can partner with them to reach more of these focused peoples here in the U.S. And then lastly, we are starting pretty people group focused teams across the US. So where we know there are populations of East or Southeast Asia's peoples that are still predominantly unreached or definitely not, a large number of them being evangelical Christians, we want to We want God to call people that really feel a burden for them, feel a desire to learn how to reach out to them, or use language and culture skills that maybe they have from their own life experience or from living overseas. And so those people are really going to lead, hopefully kind of an effort towards reaching these specific populations in their communities. We have a guy that's getting ready to come on that's really focused on Cambodians, has been most of his life here in the US. So to do that in partnership with us is like a real gift. But he already knows where there's pockets of Cambodians in the US. Like he was explaining to me, there's this city in southern Florida where there's like 60 Cambodian families, and he knows of one family within that whole community that are believers. And so, wouldn't it be amazing if we had somebody that wanted to go and be part of helping initiate reaching out to that community? But they all come from, Buddhist backgrounds. And so we need people that understand or have a desire to understand how to reach out to them in a contextual way. I think that's trying to think what else we're doing, but those are the three main things. We're doing a lot of things, but that's probably good for summarizing.
It's a lot. It's exciting. Angie, if someone is listening to this today and they're excited about it, they're really excited to hear this is happening, but then they want to get involved. Boy, I'd love to be a part of something like that. What's a step that they could take, or are there ways they could participate in what the Global Neighbors team is doing? What are opportunities like for them?
We are calling these people that are focused on like a specific people group in a specific city or metropolitan area. We're calling them a city advocate. So they're really advocating kind of with churches or partner organizations or friends to be part of reaching out to like a specific group in their city. So our hope would be, wherever you live in the US, I'm sure there's some people around you that would fall into the Southeast Asia category that we would love to be part of helping you reach out to, or finding churches that would be interested in reaching out to them. So really, I think if you're interested, that's probably the main role that we have for people wanting to join the Global Neighbors team. And of course, if you want to move somewhere really strategic, like Queens, New York, where all of our people groups live, we'd be super happy for that as well. Also really just wanting to hear if this is a place that you feel like God is laying on your heart, or a ministry that maybe you're already part of or want to be part of. Like, we just want to have a conversation with you and hear kind of what it is that God's burdened you for, and how could, if that aligns with the mission and vision God has really given us for reaching these peoples here in the US, then we would love to talk about how that might work together and how we might be part of working together.
That's great. And we really hope that going forward, Angie, you'll have a chance to have more of these conversations and to share more of the stories about what God is doing in this global neighbor space. But I think for now, this is a really good point for us to wrap up, and just grateful for a chance to be able to hear the things that God is doing right here in the U.S. in our neighborhoods. So just want to say thank you all for joining us today, and we're just grateful for this time.
Yeah, thank you guys.